Hey guys, James here again with Cedar Rapids Web Design, and I am continuing my video series on web technologies. In our last video, we sort of talked about generally what do I mean when I say web technology, and to boil that all down to one sentence, basically web technologies, as far as we're concerned, are just any app that works on the web, which I know sounds really simplistic. But some examples of web technologies are like HubSpot, MailChimp, WordPress, web hosting, things like that. And so that's what we're going to do throughout the month of March, and maybe even longer. We'll see. As we're going to talk about specific web technologies, and in this video we're going to talk about web hosting. I thought that would be a good one to start with, since it's sort of what supports all of web technologies, right? Is hosting. Every single website or app has to be hosted somewhere, and so we're going to talk about what that is. What is web hosting? We're going to talk about the different types of web hosting, and a little bit about what kind of web hosting is right for you and your business. So first I'm going to explain sort of what web hosting is, and I have an analogy that I think helps a little bit with that. And then we're going to talk about the different types of web hosting, and I have another similar analogy that I think also helps to kind of explain the differences between the different types of hosting. So what is web hosting? Web hosting is simply hosting a website or an app and making it live, making it available for people to access on the internet, right? I could build a whole app on my computer locally and store it there, and it would work on my computer, but if I'm not hosting it and making it live, nobody else can access and use it, right? And so that is what web hosting does, is it makes your app or website available to anybody who has a connection to the internet. So web hosting is sort of like, here's my analogy. No analogy is perfect, so please don't feel the need to tear this analogy apart. Just try to take from it what you can. If you compare websites to houses, the website itself is like the house. The web hosting is like the plot of land that the house is sitting on, okay? And the address of your house is like the domain name. So like one domain name is facebook.com, right? Facebook.com is like the address of a house. It tells you where that website is located. Facebook is being hosted on servers somewhere. And all a server is literally just a computer. It's just a computer that maybe has some sort of software on it specifically for hosting websites or apps. That's all it is. A server is not anything really crazy special. It's just a computer that stores your files and is connected to the internet. So don't get hung up on the word server. It's just a computer with a specific purpose of hosting things. So if you think about that, you need a plot of land to have a house, right? You can't just have a house like floating around. It needs a plot of land to sit on, and that's the same with websites. A website needs some sort of web hosting in order to exist out in the world. So just like houses, there's a wide range of different kinds of houses and different kinds of plots of land and whatnot. And just like houses, you can only have one website using a particular domain, right? You can't have two houses with the same exact address. That wouldn't work out. Where would the mail go, right? Same thing with websites. If somebody already has a domain name that you want, you're just sort of out of luck. Maybe you can reach out to them and offer to buy it from them, but you can't use a domain that's already being used. So that's sort of my analogy that I hope kind of helps explain what web hosting is. A lot of people get them confused, and they don't really know what I'm talking about. They don't know what the difference is between like a website, a domain, and hosting. They just don't know what all these things mean. So I hope that kind of clears it up. If not, that's okay. Just know that in order for your website to exist, basically, and be accessible to other people, you need web hosting. So there's the number of different kinds of web hosting. We're going to talk about three kind of four, like 3.5 types of web hosting, and a little bit about the different companies that offer hosting. There's a lot of different companies where you can get hosting from, and I'm sure you've heard of some of the bigger name ones like GoDaddy is pretty popular, Bluehost, SiteGround. There's a whole bunch of different companies out there that offer web hosting, and they all pretty much offer the same 3 kinds of web hosting. Okay, and I have a site up here right now. I have InMotion Hosting, which is who I use for my hosting. And they have right here on the main page, they have the 3 types of hosting that I'm going to talk about today. And they also have the other kind that I'm going to touch on a little bit. But basically, when you talk about website hosting, you have shared hosting, you have virtual private server, and you have dedicated server. Okay? And shared hosting, as you can see from the prices here, shared hosting is the cheapest, and a dedicated server is the most expensive. And I mentioned I have another analogy, and so I'm going to hope that this makes it more clear and not more confusing for you. But if I was trying to describe the difference between these types of hosting, when you're on shared hosting, you're basically cramming a bunch of websites on the same server, and they're all the websites are sharing that server and sharing the resources, the computer, the CPU speed and the RAM and all that stuff are being shared by all these different websites, which means if like one website is doing something, getting a whole bunch of traffic or doing something that's using up a lot of computer resources, that can affect the performance of all the other websites on that server, which is why shared hosting is so inexpensive, because it's the worst kind of hosting that you can get. It's the cheapest, most basic kind of hosting that you can get. And then a virtual private server is still technically shared hosting. You will still have multiple websites on the same server. However, they partition it in such a way as to make sure that you get a certain amount of resources. And you can upgrade that if you need to. If you start to run out of those resources and your site isn't performing very well, maybe it's loading really slowly or not loading at all. A lot of times the reason is because you're just running out of resources, and so you need to upgrade. So virtual private server hosting is nice because while you're still technically sharing a server with other people, they basically carved out a portion of that server and said this portion of the server is all yours and nobody else can access it. So it's better than shared hosting. You get better performance because you don't really have to share your space with all the other websites like you do on shared hosting. And then dedicated server is the best kind of hosting, and it's the most expensive. That's basically where your website gets its own server. No other website is on that server. It's just you. And so my analogy is if you think about it, shared hosting is sort of like having a bunch of roommates, right? You're all sharing the kitchen, you're all sharing the bathroom, you're sharing the hot water. If one person takes a really long shower, now the rest of you don't have hot water for your shower. It's the cheapest. I mean, if you get 3 or 4 roommates, you're going to have a pretty cheap rent, right? You have a place to live and it's not very expensive. But it comes with a lot of those negatives that I mentioned. You're sharing the entire space and all the resources with all of your roommates. Virtual private server is sort of like living in an apartment where you're still technically sharing a building with a whole bunch of other people, but you each have your own little apartment. You each have, your own water heater, hopefully, in a good apartment. And so you're still kind of sharing some of the, the building with people, and maybe it's a shared parking lot and things like that. And maybe you share like a laundry room, depending on what kind of apartment. But for the most part, you kind of get your own space that you don't really have to share with other people. And so if like somebody else living in that apartment complex takes a really long shower, it's probably not going to affect you. You'll still have hot water. So it's better than living in the same space with a bunch of roommates, but it's not quite as nice as living in your own house, which is what a dedicated server is. It's just you living in the house. Everything is yours. You're not sharing any part of that building with anybody else. It's all just you. And so I hope that analogy helps a little bit. if you're wondering, I've had some people recently ask me what I do for web hosting. So I have a virtual private server with InMotion Hosting, and I put all of my clients' websites on that virtual private server. And as I mentioned before, I have had to upgrade twice, and it's one of the things I like about InMotion Hosting is how easy it is to do that. So when I start to notice that I'm getting close to using up all the resources that my current plan gives me, I can go in, click a button, and upgrade, and now I have more resources, so I don't have to worry about my clients' websites going down. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to be even upgrading to an actual dedicated server here pretty soon, which is great. I'm very excited for that. So but for you, let's say you are, you're going to try to do it yourself. You're going to build your own website, and you're wondering what kind of web hosting should you get. I usually tell people, there's nothing wrong with going with the shared hosting plan at first, just to get something up and going. Just don't be surprised if you feel the need to upgrade later. If you start getting, a decent amount of traffic to your website, and maybe you're getting complaints that it's loading kind of slowly, or you've done some tests to test your website and the results just aren't very good. Just don't be surprised if at some point you think it's probably time to upgrade to maybe like a lower tier virtual private server hosting plan. But the good thing about it is you can start with the cheapest plan and just sort of work your way up as needed, right? So you don't need to come right out the gate, paying $100 a month for a dedicated server on day one. So I would say if you're just doing like one website for yourself, feel free to grab like a shared hosting plan, and then just be ready to upgrade. See if you can log into your dashboard once in a while and just see how your hosting is performing. See if you're running out of resources. There's tools you can use to monitor your websites. I use ManageWP, and one thing that ManageWP does for you, it's specifically for managing WordPress websites. It will monitor your website and actually send you a notification anytime the website goes down. So, and that costs like $1 a month or something really cheap to do that per website. So I'd recommend doing something like that. And if you notice like, oh, my website, I've got a notification telling me that my website has gone down like 4 or 5 times just in 1 month, that's really high. That shouldn't happen. If that is happening, you probably want to contact your hosting company and say, hey, what's going on? Am I running out of resources? Do I need to upgrade my plan? There might be something else going on that has nothing to do with your hosting, but it's a good place to start, is get in touch with your web host company and see if they can help you figure that out. And it just may be time to upgrade your account. On that note, if you're planning on building a website and you're going to use WordPress, it's probably actually a good idea to look at this other sort of hosting plan that has become very popular over the past few years because WordPress itself has become so popular. So WordPress is just one of many, many website builders out there, right? There's a lot of them out there. Some of them are like Wix, where you have to host it with Wix, right? You have to go to Wix.com, log into your account, and build your website there. And you can't like take a Wix website like somewhere else to a shared hosting plan or something like that. You have to do it there. Shopify is the same way. Squarespace. These are websites where they host the site themselves. You can't take it elsewhere. But there are other builders like WordPress, Joomla, Drupal, Concrete 5, where you host it on your own server. So you need to get like a hosting plan with someone like InMotion Hosting or SiteGround or something, and install WordPress or Joomla or whatever builder you're using, and then you can build your website that way. WordPress has become so popular that hosting companies are basically just creating hosting plans just for WordPress. So if you're planning on using WordPress, I would say probably just get a WordPress hosting plan. You can see it's pretty much the same price as like a shared hosting, but you typically get better performance hosting a WordPress site with somebody's dedicated WordPress hosting plan. And so this takes a lot of the setup work out and makes it very easy. You don't have to go in and install WordPress You basically purchase the plan, and then it just walks you through. It says, okay, what's your website name? What do you want your login name to be? What do you want your password to be? What's your email? Boom, it does all the stuff on the back end. It installs WordPress for you, and after like a minute or two of it asking you for those kind of pieces of information, you're already ready to build your website. You're looking at your dashboard and ready to go, and you don't have to worry about managing a server like you would when you get if you get a virtual private server or dedicated server. There's just a little bit more work that you're usually required to do, unless you pay even more money for what they call like managed hosting, which is where they manage everything for you, but they charge for it. So WordPress hosting is by far the easiest. If you just want to host one, WordPress website, I would say just get WordPress hosting. It's going to be by far the easiest setup. They're going to give you, they talk about ultra fast WordPress performance. They're going to give you free SSL, at least InMotion Hosting does, and at this point, most hosting companies are doing that. If we click here to learn more, you can see they even have different options. So if you just want to host one website, it's $9 a month after the discount wears off. That's pretty good price, right? $9 a month to have a WordPress website. Maybe you want to have 2, 3, 9 websites. They have different plans for that. $33 a month for 6 different websites. That's a really good price. And you get a lot of cool features that come along with that. And the biggest feature to WordPress hosting is just the simplicity. It's just easier for you. So that, I think, is that's about it for what web hosting is and what the different types of web hosting are. I do want to talk a little bit. I don't want this to sound like salesy, but I want to just sort of explain our hosting policy and sort of why we charge what we do and what we offer for that. So you'll notice these plans, if I come back here, virtual private servers, $50 a month, a dedicated server is $130 a month. I charge $100 a month to host your website. And you might be thinking, well, why would you charge that much? I'm not paying $50. I've had to upgrade a couple times, so I don't even remember what I'm paying by now. But let's say I'm paying $80 to $100 a month myself, and I'm hosting all my clients' websites on that, and I'm charging each one of them $100. It kind of sounds like a scam, like I'm scamming you guys, right? Well, I'm not. And there are many other companies that basically do the same thing. When they host your website, they charge a monthly fee. $100 a month is actually kind of cheap if you shop around. So I want to talk a little bit about what you are getting when you pay an agency or someone like myself to host a website. What are you getting for that cost? So first of all, you're getting good hosting, at least with me, because I use InMotion Hosting. I did some research. They're a highly rated hosting company. I've been very happy with them over the past few years. They're a highly rated hosting company that provides good web hosting. I mentioned I have that software monitoring my websites to let me know if they go down. My websites almost never go down. This is reliable hosting, and it's a lot better than some kind of shared hosting plan. Like I said, I have a virtual private server. I've already upgraded a couple times, and I'm probably going to be on a dedicated server soon. So I'm doing what I can to make sure that my clients' websites are going to perform as good as possible. But beyond that, that software I mentioned that monitors websites, that's not just for me and my personal website. That is for all my clients. So if any of my clients' websites ever go down, I will be notified of it immediately, and it will be my responsibility to figure out why it went down. It'll be me on the phone with customer service, not you. So that's a benefit right there. You don't have to worry about it. I worry about it. Apart from uptime monitoring, that's what they call it, to make sure the website is up, the same software, ManageWP, also allows me to easily upgrade your website. So I have a ton of websites that I have to manage, and luckily for me, I don't have to log into each one of those websites individually to update the WordPress software, or the theme, or the plugins. I can do all that kind of from one dashboard with ManageWP. And so that's another thing you don't have to worry about. When you use WordPress, WordPress is a fantastic website builder, but it requires a little bit of maintenance. You basically just need to make sure that you keep it updated, because the people who do WordPress and the themes and the plugins, they're constantly trying to keep up with the latest security measures. Maybe somebody finds a vulnerability or something, and so that's got to get fixed and patched and updated. And so it's just important to make sure that you are regularly updating WordPress, you're regularly updating whatever theme you're using, and you're regularly updating any plugins that you're using. And that is something that I also take care of for all my clients. They don't have to mess with any of that stuff. So, and it's hard to say which one of those is more beneficial. Honestly, probably that one is more beneficial, because if you get a good hosting company, your website's not going to go down very often. It's nice to know that if it does, I'll be the one to deal with it, not you. But really, the maintenance is probably the biggest value that you get when you pay someone like me or an agency to host your website, is they're taking care of that regular maintenance for you. You don't have to worry about it. It's the biggest reason a website gets hacked is they just neglect to keep it updated. So there's definitely value in that. The other bit of value that agencies typically offer with their hosting is backups. So for me, I have again, Managed WP. It's a fantastic program. I really like it. What it does for me is it makes a backup of every one of my clients' websites every single day. And it stores those backups for 90 days. So if something weird ever happens to your website, which has happened a couple times, maybe the client logs in to do something and they're not a web developer and they don't know what they're doing. They mess something up. They don't know how to fix it. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, boy, this will take me hours to fix. I can just click a few buttons and restore a backup. I can say, okay, when did you do this? Okay, you logged in last Tuesday and did this. So I'll just bring up the backup from Monday that was made the day before they messed it up, and it restores the website to exactly the way it was before they logged in and messed things up, and we're back up and running very quickly. So that is another pretty big benefit. Like I said, I store those backups are stored for 90 days, so we can go back pretty far if we need to, and restore somebody's website if something weird happens. So that goes a little bit beyond hosting. That's also, when I say I charge $100 for hosting, I mean I'm charging $100 for hosting and uptime monitoring and WordPress maintenance and backup storage, and all that stuff is included. I also offer, I give my clients 1 free hour of web development work every month. If they just need some updates to be made and they don't want to log in and do it themselves, I can go in and make minor updates, and they get an hour of that for free every month. So I just wanted to take a little minute to explain, because I feel like what I'm doing is pretty typical, and so you've probably heard some things from other companies that sound similar to what I just mentioned, and maybe you've been wondering, okay, but what am I really getting for that amount of money every month when I could go to InMotion Hosting and get $6 a month? I could get a shared hosting plan. Why would I give you $100 a month to host my website? And so hopefully that sort of clears that up for you. And again, I would never judge somebody for going with the shared hosting plan. If you don't have $100 a month, you don't have $100 a month. There's no getting around that. But hopefully you at least understand that there is value in the prices that these agencies are asking for hosting. And also just to make sure you do your due diligence and make sure that you actually are getting some value. If somebody comes at you and says, we want $200 a month to host your website, you should be asking these questions. Okay, what are you doing for me for that amount of money? Are you making backups of my website? How long are you going to store those backups? Are you doing the maintenance for me? Do I have to do that? What if my website goes down? What happens? Do I have to call customer service, or are you going to do that? Make sure that you're actually getting some value for the hosting that you're paying for. So I don't know, that's it. I think that video is probably longer than I planned. I don't know, hopefully it wasn't too long. If you're still here, hey, thanks. I hope you gained some useful information from this. If you have any questions and you want me to clarify anything I've said in this video, please don't hesitate to leave a comment, and I will respond, and I will try my best to clarify and help you figure out what you need. So thanks for watching, guys, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.